Hey guys, how's it going? Preparing here. Today I want to talk to you guys about how to craft items in Path of Exile and most effective way to do it, because I sell the base crafting items and I know a lot of people do their own stuff, and there's some very important things that you have to know when you go into this. Some of them are pretty obvious, but some of them are a little bit unknown, so I want to go through pretty much everything that goes through my head when I'm thinking about or actualizing the crafting process in Path of Exile. So the main thing that you have to first figure out is like what items you actually need for your character, and are they worth crafting? And I want to show you guys an example here. So this is a 3-stat ring, and I used the crafting method of using a Regal Orb. So I got a pretty good blue ring on a pretty good base, and then I Regal Orbed it and got another third good stat. And the probability of this is not that high, but the probability of getting a decent life roll with one decent resist on an already resist base is actually pretty easy to get. However, you have to compare this to the option of just buying a ring like this straight up. Probably not now. I think now it's still probably worth it to craft and Regal blue rings. But in some time, maybe in a month, maybe in 2 months, maybe if you're playing standard, maybe if you're playing hardcore, it's actually cheaper to just buy a ring like this. You can probably buy a ring like this for a Regal Orb and maybe a little bit extra, which is pretty much the cost of crafting it, but you won't get that third resist every time. So you have to really see what the value of what you're trying to get is actually worth compared to the currency that you're investing. So that's really step one. Is it actually worth to craft it at all? The other thing that you have to keep in mind is when you're crafting an item, what base do you actually need? So, give you guys an example here. Do we have a helmet? Sure, a helmet. So this is a level 76 helmet. At level 76, you can get the top accuracy roll, which is a suffix. And there's a few other things, but none that come to the top of my head. But I can use the accuracy roll as an example. So let's say you are someone who is like a spellcaster, doesn't need accuracy, but you want all the life, all the armor, all the resists, all the stats. What I use is I go through the official Path of Exile website. There are some websites out there that compile this information and are mostly accurate, but when I'm dumping 10, 20, 30, 40 chaos into an item, I need empirical data. And to get empirical data, what I do is I search using PoE Explorer, and I try to find the best items in the game by pushing the limits of accuracy and all that stuff to see what stats are possible on items. Because while, let's say, 109 life on a piece of armor is possible, but on a helmet it's not possible. The max roll for life on a helmet is actually 99. So you have to figure this out, and then you take this data back to the Path of Exile website, which tells you which item level each stat requires. And the way I do it is, go in game/item level. Do this a lot. Make sure it's the item level that you need, and then you craft it. In this particular case, because it is 76 and because it can roll accuracy, the question comes up like this. If you're going to craft an item for yourself, because if you want to craft an item that just happens at accuracy and just sell it to someone else who needs accuracy, that's fine. But if you don't need accuracy yourself, this helmet, for the example of a life-based caster, is actually worse than an item level 75. Because at 75 you avoid the accuracy roll, thus reducing the number of stats that are possible on the item to the ones that you actually want. So you have to look at it like this. To simplify it, let's say you value, I don't know, maybe lightning resist or fire resist or cold resist over accuracy. If those were the only 4 possible suffixes, which they're not, but for this example, let's say they are, and each one has 5 possibilities, so each one has 5 brackets, you can get 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 accuracy, or 10 lightning resist, 20, 30, 40, 50, and the same for all the other resists. Your total stat pool is 20 stats. If all the stats are possible at 76, but only 19 of them, save the accuracy, are possible at 75, your chance of getting a resist is slightly higher than if it was item level 76. So as a result, if you do want to craft your own helmet, if you do want to craft a helmet that doesn't have accuracy, you want to craft a helmet that's actually below level 76. This gets a little bit more complicated because, for instance, with energy shield items like my helmet, the top hybrid ES roll, which is a pretty necessary prefix, does require level 78, while the second best helmet requires level 72. Through 72 all the way to 78 are a crapload of stats, including some which are not favorable, like mana and, rarity, quantity, accuracy, life regen, all the kind of shit that I've been getting in a few videos on this helmet. But the idea is that even though the best possible helmet may be 78, the chance of it being a really good helmet may actually be lower than if you're crafting one of a lower item level. So those are the probability things involved. It seems really complicated, but if you are going to invest, like I said, 30, 40 chaos, which I have on my helmet, for instance, you really have to know this stuff. You really have to do the research, at the very least, for the particular item that you want to dump your currency into crafting. There are a few other things at play here when it comes to crafting items. Very often when people craft items, they just want a pretty good one to sell it, and the investment point, sometimes turns out to be pretty good. But in the end, if you are crafting your own gear, you have to be prepared to spend a lot of currency. I think on average, you come out maybe about even, maybe a little bit below even when you're crafting items compared to buying them straight out. The thing that you gain on is, if you happen to be really, really lucky and get like the most insane item ever, you're essentially making an item that otherwise you wouldn't be able to buy. And this obviously changes, as I mentioned, as the league progresses. When it has more and more items, it becomes a little bit less valuable to craft items. But somewhere in there is a balance point that it's pretty important to realize. In my experience, I find crafting items in Path of Exile very, very enjoyable, very in-depth, and fairly rewarding in some cases. But you have to understand that it's a very costly process. And if you don't have 20, 30, 40 chaos to burn, it's not necessarily wrong to try to craft an item, but you should probably settle for a pretty mediocre one if you happen to stumble upon it. So that's really the ideas that are involved. That's kind of what goes through my head when I'm making this stuff. I'll include some links to the typical stuff, but make sure you do the research if you're going to do this stuff. Make sure you know what you're doing, because Path of Exile, accumulating wealth, is a pretty big part of the game. Anyway guys, hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys tomorrow.